One of my viewers told me about a new, very unique project that I genuinely didn't know existed. It's called Level 1 Lunatic, and the short version is that there are people out there who have decided that Level 1 is the end game in Classic WoW. They never level up, they stay at 1 forever, and they raid. I want to be clear that I'm not making this up. I had to read it twice the first time. Then I went and watched footage to make sure I wasn't being trolled, and I still kind of can't believe people are doing this. But they are. They've been doing it for a year on Turtle WoW, and now that Turtle has shut down, they're rebuilding the whole thing on a new server called LunaticPTR. Here's what community member Tofu has to say about this community.
The very first thing I figured out when I started the challenge, this is a social challenge. I never had such a great experience when it comes to getting to know new people, and the guild I'm into here is the greatest thing that ever happened in over 20 years of playing World of Warcraft.
By the way, the footage you're going to be seeing throughout this video is from members of the Lunatic community, mostly from Cysthen and Tofu, who runs gameplay videos of their dungeon runs. And they were kind enough to let me use it for this. Just wanted to flag that up front. Okay, so picture this. You're a level 1 character, you've got maybe a few hundred health points, your damage is in the single digits, and you walk into dead mines. The mobs inside are level 17 and up. Mr. Smite is still Mr. Smite. The Defias pillagers will absolutely one-shot you if you stand in front of them. And somehow, you clear the place. That's the thing they do. That's the whole gameplay loop. How does that even work mechanically? Because that was my first question too. Turns out, the mobs aren't scaled down. The dungeons aren't easier. The team running LunaticPTR confirmed this directly when I asked. Everything is at its normal level, which means the entire challenge becomes about figuring out which stats, which gear combinations, which class roles can actually contribute when you're stuck at 1. The team has been generous enough to let me see their internal changelog for what they've been working on, and honestly, I came away thinking the scope is bigger than I'd been giving them credit for. I'm not going to walk through the whole thing because they want to do their own announcement, and that's fair. But a few highlights worth mentioning. They've built a 40-man version of No Morrigan, which is not a thing that's ever existed in vanilla, with unique class-specific gear sets and set bonuses tailored for level 1 play. There's an entirely new zone called Redwall Keep with its own NPCs, quests, and reputation faction. They've added new bosses to existing dungeons. They've hidden cosmetics in roughly 200 quests scattered across the world, which turns ordinary questing into something closer to a treasure hunt. And they've stripped the level requirements of professions like cooking, alchemy, and fishing, so a level 1 character can actually use those systems the way they were meant to be used. There's also no donation shop. The functionality has been removed entirely, which, given how every other private server is structured around at least some kind of cosmetic exchange, is a pretty meaningful statement about what kind of project this is intended to be. Anyway, that's just a fraction of what they've done. When they actually announce the full changelog themselves, I think people are going to be surprised by how much is in there. Hit rating becomes the foundation stat because at level 1 against level 20 plus mobs, you miss almost everything from the front. Stamina matters less than you'd think. Damage stats matter less than hit. The whole stat priority is upside down compared to regular WoW, and that creates a meta that the community has been theory crafting for the better part of a year. I'm deliberately not going to try to explain the specifics of how they pull this off because that's their territory. The Lunatic community has spent a year working out which classes fill which roles, what gear combinations make tanking viable when nobody has tank abilities, how to coordinate 10 level 1s through encounters that were never designed for them. That's discovery work, and it'd be presumptuous of me to walk in from outside and tell you how their meta works. If you want to learn, watch their footage, read their forum threads, join the Discord and ask. The community is welcoming, and they'll happily explain how a level 1 rogue actually does what a level 1 rogue does. What I can talk about is the project itself because the changes LunaticPTR is shipping are interesting in their own right. The thing that surprised me most when I started digging in was how undercooked the original Lunatic content on Turtle actually was. Over the entire year the project existed, there were around 6 total dungeon drops across 3 raids. 6 items total. For a community running 10-man raids regularly, that's almost nothing. The challenge existed, the community kept showing up, but the reward structure to support it was, to put it gently, minimal. So what did the community do? They started writing their own. Forum threads full of item suggestions, full gear progression theory crafted from Ragefire all the way up to Gnomorigan. Stat balancing worked out in spreadsheets, and here's the part that really got me. One of the team members told me that when Turtle eventually added items for Frostmane Hollow, those item descriptions in the game were copied word for word from the community's forum thread.
Oh my god! Yo, that's my item! Yo, the flavor text and everything!
The community wasn't just providing feedback, they were literally writing the content. Lunatic is, in the team's own words, a Turtle-adjacent appropriate continuation. Not a fork, not a competitor, not a replacement, just the work the community had already designed, finally getting built out into a complete server, picking up where Turtle's development paused. And the scope of what they're shipping is dramatic. Around 150 Lunatic exclusive items planned across the full dungeon progression, compared to the 6 items they got over a year on Turtle. That's effectively the entire endgame the community wanted but never got to play. Worth noting that these Lunatic items don't replace normal loot. Vanilla Deadmines drops still happen exactly as you'd expect. The Lunatic items sit as an additional layer on top, and they only drop when all 10 players in the dungeon are Lunatic flagged. So you can't bring a level 60 friend to carry you through and farm Lunatic gear. The challenge stays a challenge by design. There's also a technical fix the new server is shipping that matters more than it sounds. Several healing spells on the original setup carry double base threat compared to Holy Light, which made non-paladin healers essentially unable to heal raids. LunaticPTR has a core level fix that adjusts those spells to threat parity, which opens up the rest of the healing classes to actually participate. It sounds boring and technical, and it is, but it's the kind of fix that meaningfully expands what the community can do. And speaking of design choices, the gameplay loop outside dungeons is just as thought through. Solo questing is limited, obviously, because you're level 1. You can probably finish most of Goldshare's quests as a human player. You might push into Westfall some with the right class and buffs. Quests that are just talking to NPCs work regardless of level, like running across to Duskwood to talk to Jitters. But the bulk of WoW's quest content is gated by combat, and combat at level 1 is, well, you can imagine. What that does is push everyone toward grouping. Quest credit works inside raids, which means instead of grinding your dailies alone, you do them with 9 other lunatics. Battleground reputation gives you actual progression through PvP. Hidden cosmetics and pets are tucked into the quest system as discoveries. And you know what? I think that's actually one of the more interesting design choices in the whole project. WoW has spent the last 2 decades getting more solo-friendly. Quests work alone, dungeons run with random groups, raids have flexible difficulty, so you don't even need a stable guild. Lunatic moves deliberately in the other direction. You can't solo your way through this content even if you wanted to. The challenge is the social experience, and the community built itself around that constraint rather than fighting against it. Now, fair warning, this isn't a server that's open right now. The team told me they're, quote, really close, but they don't want to commit to a launch date, which is probably the right call given how many private server projects in the last couple of years have overpromised and underdelivered. They're a community team rebuilding something that genuinely mattered to them, and they'd rather take the time than rush it, and to be honest, it's also not a server for everyone. The niche is genuinely narrow. If you love leveling, if the journey from 1 to 60 is the part of WoW that hooks you, this server is offering you the opposite of what you want. But if the idea of staying small and engaging with WoW's mechanics in completely new ways sounds interesting, if you like being in a tight community where everyone is solving the same weird problem, then this might be the most interesting WoW server you've never heard of. What I keep coming back to though, even more than the mechanics, is what this whole thing says about how niche communities survive when their server dies. Turtle WoW shutting down should have meant level 1 Lunatic dying with it. That's how it normally goes. The server closes, the community scatters, the work gets forgotten. Someone references it on Reddit 5 years later as the thing they used to do back when. Instead, the Lunatic community decided their work was worth preserving and rebuilding, and they're just doing that. The same people who theory-crafted gear drops from Ragefire to Gnomerigan are now building their own server to host the result. That kind of ownership of the most niche corners of the private server scene is, I think, what we need more of. The big servers will come and go, the mainstream content gets the coverage and the population. But the weird and experimental stuff usually vanishes when the host platform vanishes. LunaticPTR is a counterexample, and it's worth paying attention to even if you'd never play it yourself. If you're curious enough to look closer, LunaticPTR.com is the website. The Discord link is on there, and the community is welcoming if you show up with genuine questions. Go watch some of the dungeon footage too. The pacing is wild, the strategy is fascinating, and watching a group of level 1s actually kill Mr. Smite is something I didn't expect to find as satisfying as I did. For now, drop your thoughts in the comments. If you play Lunatic on Turtle, I genuinely like to hear what the experience was like from inside the community. If you'd never heard of any of this before today, what's your reaction? And if you have other examples of niche communities that survived their server dying, share those too, because I think it's a pattern worth documenting. Thank you so much for watching. Until the next one, take care.